Milo Grant locked the front door of Ivywood Books at 10:03 p.m. and immediately wished he had someone to walk home with. The April wind threaded itself through the crooked streets of Brierley-on-Thames, rattling the shutters like loose teeth. Milo, a lean man of 32 who blushed whenever anyone raised a voice, lingered behind the cash desk to finish the evening's figures. Numbers were comforting, they all made sense eventually. The shop's only eccentricity, at least until that night, was an oak-panelled alcove in the rear, where an antique Remington No. 12 typewriter sat on a pedestal under a green-shaded librarian's lamp. Eloise Carmichael, the shop's owner, believed every bookshop required one theatrical object to be remembered by. "Milo," she had said, "the Remington is our hearth-fire. It crackles without smoking." This evening the Remington began to crackle in earnest. A metallic clack broke the hush. Milo straightened, a ledger sheet half filled in his hand. The shop was empty but for books and dust. He pushed his spectacles up the bridge of his nose, tiptoed toward the alcove, and saw the carriage slide back, a fresh letter yanked from the platen, as if an invisible typist were working briskly. Keys rose, struck, returned. Clack, clack, ding, clack, clack, ding. Milo's mouth dried. "Hello?" he ventured. The keys ignored him. They hammered out line after line. He forced himself close enough to glimpse the words, "Stop the reading or die. This is your last warning. EC ink turns to blood at midnight." The instant the line ended, the typewriter fell silent, as though it had said everything it needed to say. Milo rooted in his pocket for Eloise's brass skeleton key. He unlocked the ornamental glass cover, really just for show, and touched the old keys. They were icy, quivering slightly, the remnants of motion still glowing in the metal. The Remington wasn't plugged into anything. It had never been electrified. Milo swallowed, lifted the crisp sheet, and stared at the sentences again, hoping they would rearrange into something harmless. They did not. He telephoned Eloise. She answered on the second ring from her flat above the shop, voice syrupy with tiredness. When he described what had happened, footsteps thumped the ceiling. 30 seconds later, she hurried down the spiral stairs in her quilted dressing gown, charcoal grey braid swinging against her shoulder. "You poor thing," she said, patting Milo's arm. Probably some windy draft shook the mechanism loose. Milo started to object, then saw her eyes. Thoughtful, not frightened, as though she were fitting the event into a larger private puzzle. She folded the letter, slipped it into her robe pocket. "All right, Milo. Go home. We have Allegra Fox's poetry reading tomorrow. You'll need your wits. But I'll lock the alcove and see to it. Go." Milo obeyed. In bed, he tried reading Agatha Christie for comfort, but every creak of his bedsit floorboards sounded like ghost fingers on Remington keys. The poetry reading began the next evening at 7 in the converted chapel behind Ivywood Books. Allegra Fox, international darling, suede boots, laugh like broken glass, drew a crowd of 60. Eloise, regal in burgundy velvet, greeted each guest with a glass of sparkling elderflower cordial. Milo arranged stacks of Allegra's newest collection, Tidal Bones, at the back. Rowan Blake loitered by the refreshments table. He was 22, sparrow-boned, with a haircut that suggested he trimmed it using office scissors in bad lighting. Milo knew him as an aspiring poet whose self-published chapbook, Fossils in Plasticine, had sold 2 copies, one to Rowan's mother, one to Eloise, out of pity. Rowan watched Allegra with the expression of a starving fox watching a henhouse. Victor Harcourt, portly owner of Harcourt's Antiquities, arrived late, carrying a bouquet of hothouse lilies for Eloise. He had sold her the Remington last year. "A showpiece," he'd declared, stroking its enamel surface. "And if you ever tire of it, my dear, I'll buy it back at a handsome premium." The reading began. Allegra's voice swooped and dipped through lines about tempestuous love and drowning cities. Applause cracked like a firework at the end of each poem. During the interval, Eloise mounted the low dais to thank everyone. Someone handed her a china teacup decorated with violets. She sipped, smiled, continued speaking. Then the cup slipped from her fingers, shattering against the boards. Eloise's knees buckled. She slumped, grabbing at thin air. Milo was first to reach her. Her lips were bluish, a chemical almond scent clung to her breath. Even Milo, who never so much as sipped amaretto, recognized bitter almonds, the telltale reek of cyanide. She tried to whisper something, but only exhaled. An ambulance came, but by then Eloise Carmichael was dead. Brierley-on-Thames possessed exactly 3 detectives. D.I. Karen, the senior, took statements until near dawn. Milo, still in shock, described the letter the Remington had typed. Karen raised an eyebrow, but bagged the letter as evidence. Allegra Fox sobbed into a monogrammed handkerchief, insisting she could never harm her beloved patroness. Rowan Blake answered sullenly. Victor Harcourt declared, hand on heart, that he would offer a £500 reward for the villain's capture. They all went home, but Milo did not sleep. Eloise's final look, half warning, half apology, leaned against his ribs like a lodged knife. The police would do what they could, but he owed Eloise more than that. She'd hired him when anxiety attacks had cost him his previous job. She'd told him shy didn't mean small. He decided, amid the jittery dawn, that he, Milo Grant, would find the murderer himself. First, the typewriter. Inspector Karen allowed Milo supervised access to the shop. The Remington sat beneath its glass cover, 2 keys, Q and P, still raised a millimetre higher than the rest, as if frozen mid-strike. Milo examined the platen. Fine grains of something glittered in the ridges, dark, crumbly. He dabbed one fingertip, sniffed, graphite and grease with a faint vegetal odour, unfamiliar. He knelt. Tiny scratches marred the pedestal's underside. He fetched a torch and shone it between the typewriter's brass feet. A wad of tape clung there, holding a thin nylon filament, almost invisible. The filament trailed down through a drilled hole in the pedestal, then vanished into the floorboards. Milo's pulse hammered. Someone had rigged the Remington to type by remote tension. Pulling the filament would depress the keys. He closed the shop, hurried next door to Gentry's hobby supplies. Mr. Gentry, who remembered Milo from childhood model train contests, identified the filament as extra strong kite line. "Comes in 8-metre spools," Gentry said. "I sell loads to the university's aeronautics club. Also to Rowan Blake, that poet lad. He uses it for mobile sculptures." Rowan. Milo thanked him and left. Rowan Blake lived in a rented attic room above the Crown and Plover pub. Milo climbed 3 flights, heart galloping, and knocked. Rowan opened the door wearing headphones, surprise curdling into annoyance when he saw Milo. "We're closed," Rowan said. "Ivywood's closed indefinitely," Milo replied. "May I come in?" "Why?" "To ask why you bought kite line and ran it through the floor of our shop." Rowan's jaw dropped. He stepped aside. Rowan's bedsit smelled of turpentine and ramen. Abstract wire mobiles dangled like broken umbrellas from the ceiling. On the desk lay spools of nylon filament, pliers, and something that looked suspiciously like a miniature pulley system. Rowan sank onto the bed. "I rigged the Remington," he admitted, "but you don't understand. It was a prank, not murder. Threatening Eloise wasn't a prank. I never addressed the letter to her." Rowan rubbed his temples. "I typed nonsense, random phrases. I planned to show Allegra Fox afterward, make her think the shop was haunted. She ridiculed my poems in front of everyone at a festival last year. I wanted payback." Milo folded his arms. The note read, "Stop the reading or die. That's hardly nonsense." Rowan's eyes widened. "I didn't write that. I set it up earlier in the week, sure, but yesterday afternoon I had food delivery shifts till midnight. Check with Briley Eats. Someone must have used my rig." He offered his phone. Milo scrolled through location stamps. Rowan's bicycle GPS plotted across town all evening. An alibi, annoyingly solid. "What about cyanide?" Milo asked. "Eloise's tea was spiked." Rowan flinched. "God, no, I swear." Milo spotted a book on Rowan's windowsill, Poisonous Plants of the British Isles. He opened it. 2 pages about apricot kernels, natural cyanide source, were highlighted. Rowan flushed. Research for a poem cycle. Death in flora, metaphorically. Milo left undecided. Rowan might be foolish enough for sabotage, yet the timing felt off. Someone else had appropriated his trick. Milo's second visit was to Victor Harcourt's shop. Harcourt stood behind a mahogany counter polishing binoculars. An oil painting of a swan hung above the fireplace. Milo noticed 3 Remington ribbons in glass jars, old but vivid. "Poor Eloise," Harcourt said. "A diamond among pebbles." He sighed theatrically. "Did the police find any leads?" "They're interviewing everyone," Milo said. "I wondered if you might shed light on the Remington's provenance." Harcourt smiled thinly. "Bought at a Dorset estate sale. Completely ordinary." "Yet you offered Eloise double what she paid the moment it arrived." "Sentimental value," Harcourt said. A bell tinkled. A customer entered, ending the conversation. But Milo had observed something else. A smear of the same crumbly dark residue on Harcourt's shirt cuff that he'd found on the typewriter platen. That evening, Milo returned to the empty bookshop, determined to crawl beneath the floorboards. Using Eloise's master key, he unlocked the cellar door. The stairs smelled of damp paper and mice. Beams showed a fresh borehole where the filament had poked through. He traced it to a discarded wooden spool and a child's battery-operated motor cobbled into a winch. Clever, flip a switch, the motor reels in filament, keys strike, letter emerges. On a trestle table near the motor lay a torn invoice bearing Harcourt's letterhead, dated 3 days prior, listing clockwork components, assorted gears, antique ribbon, crimson. Milo photographed it. Footsteps creaked overhead. Milo froze. The shop was locked. No one should be there. He crept upstairs. Lights were off save the security bulb above the till. Silhouette, a man riffling through a shelf behind the counter. Milo's breath hitched. He flicked on the main lights. "Stop!" Victor Harcourt spun, jaw slack. "Milo, you gave me a fright." "What are you doing?" "Retrieving an item Eloise promised me." He gestured vaguely. "Her personal ledger of antique purchases. With her gone, I fear it'll be mislaid. You'll need police permission." Harcourt's eyes hardened. "I dislike your tone, boy." "Leave," Milo said, surprised at his own steadiness. Harcourt left, but not before Milo noticed a bruise on the back of his right hand, shaped like a crescent, the sort a teacup handle might make if gripped while slipping. Milo carried his findings to Inspector Karen the next morning. Karen listened, impressed but non-committal. "We're waiting on toxicology. Sit tight, Mr. Grant." Milo, restless, visited Allegra Fox at the Swan Hotel. She opened in silk kimono, red eyes behind sunglasses. "I adored Eloise," she said, letting Milo in. "She championed new poets, even hopeless ones like Rowan Blake. I can't believe she's gone." "You two argued yesterday morning," Milo said. Allegra stiffened. "Who told you?" "Mrs. Pendleton from the tea shop overheard." Allegra exhaled. Eloise planned to launch a young poets collection, someone she called the next literary earthquake. "That poet wasn't me. My publisher is furious when I'm overshadowed." I raised my voice. "But we reconciled. She even gave me a first edition of Keats as a peace token." Milo glanced at her dressing table. The Keats lay open. Inside was a folded receipt from Harcourt's Antiquities, dated last autumn, addressed to Allegra, Forgeries Department. A word leapt at Milo. Facsimile. His brain clicked. Harcourt dealt forgeries. Eloise, a noted identifier of rare texts, must have discovered it and threatened exposure. That, not the reading, was the real motive. Harcourt silenced her and used the reading as cover. Allegra followed his gaze, cheeks flushing. "He said it was genuine," she whispered. "Paid 3,000. If Eloise had proved it false last night, I'd look foolish, but I wouldn't kill her for it." Milo believed her. Humiliation wasn't equal to murder, but it strengthened the case against Harcourt. Sunday dawned pewter grey. Milo drafted a plan worthy of the detective novels he shelved daily. He telephoned Harcourt, voice quavering by design. "Mr. Harcourt, I found something distressing in Eloise's safe," he said. "A notebook proving certain first editions in town are fake. Yours are mentioned by name. Inspector Karen doesn't have it yet. Perhaps we could talk, privately?" Harcourt swallowed the bait. They arranged to meet that evening in Ivywood. Milo borrowed a recording device from Mrs. Pendleton's son, a journalism student, and hid it beneath the Remington. He also swapped the shop's CCTV hard drive for a fresh one, making sure cameras were targeted at the alcove. At 8 sharp, Harcourt arrived, warily elegant in tweed. Milo led him to the alcove. A weathered ledger lay open on the pedestal. "Is that it?" Harcourt asked. Milo nodded, retreating 2 steps, heart punching his breastbone. Harcourt flipped pages, reading faster, nostrils flaring. "This is nonsense," he muttered, but his colour bleached. "She had no right. Where's the original?" "That is the original," Milo said. "I made a copy for the police." Harcourt's head jerked up. The shop seemed suddenly airless. "You meddling little clerk!" He lunged. Milo stumbled back, knocking over a ladder of greeting cards. Harcourt's fingers closed on Milo's collar, but released just as abruptly when Inspector Karen stepped from the shadows with 2 constables. "Evening, Mr. Harcourt," Karen said. "Lovely of you to join us." The constables snapped cuffs on Harcourt before he found speech. Karen played the recording, Harcourt's voice admitting he'd faked editions, declaring Eloise had no right. It wasn't a full confession, but close. Then Karen opened a small evidence envelope. Inside were 2 items recovered that afternoon by forensics: the smashed teacup's handle, bearing Harcourt's fingerprints, and grains of pulverized apricot kernel hidden in Harcourt's office. Enough cyanide to kill 10 Eloises. Harcourt crumpled, fury leaking into despair. "She was going to ruin me," he said hoarsely. "I only meant to frighten her with that damned typewriter hoax. Make her cancel the reading, give me time." But she ignored it. "So I improvised. Rowan's mechanism, Allegra's forged Keats, Eloise's elderflower tea, they converged into murder's shape. A week later, Milo stood in the chapel, now hushed except for dust motes. Ivywood Books would reopen under a trust Eloise left in her will. Milo was interim manager. Flowers crowded the dais where she'd fallen, left by patrons and strangers. Inspector Karen shook Milo's hand. Without your persistence, Harcourt might have walked free. Milo blushed. Eloise once said shy people can be loud on paper. I suppose I had to be loud in real life, just this once. He returned to the shop. The Remington gleamed beneath its cover. Milo sat before it, slid in a sheet of fresh parchment, and typed, "For Eloise, who gave me courage. Your bookshop lives, and so does your fire." The keys clacked willingly, obedient at last to visible hands. Outside, the rain eased, and Ivywood's signboard creaked like applause.